Welcome to the presentation of a lecture from Gnostic Radio, a free public service from the Gnostic tradition of Samael Aun Weor. Gnosis is the root wisdom of all the world's great religions. Gnosis is a universal teaching of practical science, whose goal is absolute liberation from suffering and the complete development of the human being. This lecture is one of hundreds available as free downloads, podcasts, or transcriptions. Our lectures range in topic and complexity in order to address the many needs of humanity. We invite you to browse our library of lectures to find teachings that suit you. Each Saturday, Gnostic Radio broadcasts live and includes a free online classroom, allowing listeners to see images, read related scriptures, and ask questions of the speaker. To learn how to participate, visit gnosticradio.org. Gnostic Radio is a service of Glorian Publishing, a non-profit organization. The lectures and radio broadcast have been made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. Most spiritual schools recommend a donation of $10 to $20 per lecture. To make a donation, visit gnosticradio.org. Now, with heartfelt wishes for the end of suffering for all creatures, we begin the lecture. May all beings be happy.
Tradition in the Gnostic tradition, we're interested in understanding something about life, not just going along with the flow of everyday existence. But students of Gnosis want to penetrate the veil and see something fundamental and true. In other words, the Gnostic student does not rely on mere belief, but instead wants to see the truth and experience the truth, to know the truth, to feel it, to taste it, to touch it, to live it. In order for us to comprehend that, what Gnosis means, what it is, as opposed to just a theory or an idea or a word that we talk about, we have to utilize a very special form of energy. A form of energy that all of us have, but that unfortunately we've never learned how to use. And so it goes ignored, wasted, and in the worst cases, misused. That energy is the same energy that causes everything to exist. It is the very force, the very fountain from which all life is nourished. And that energy is in us, in every level of what we are as a human being. So the Gnostic student is seeking how to first recognize that energy, to know what that energy is. Secondly, to harness it, to learn how to grasp it and use it. And third, to direct it by will, to use it for the benefit of everyone. So these are three essential phases through which every spiritual aspirant of any tradition ultimately has to accomplish. The first is to know what that energy is, to recognize it, to see it, to experience it, to taste it, touch it, to use it. That energy is the very fuel of spiritual experience. Everything that exists is subject to cause and effect. In order to arrive at a given circumstance, a given experience, the causes must have been produced for that experience to occur. In order for you to take a walk, there are many causes and conditions that have to be satisfied in order to allow you to take that walk. You need a healthy body. You need a place to walk. You need to know how to walk. You need the freedom to walk. Similarly, spiritually, if we want to walk spiritually, we need to learn how. We need to set up the causes and conditions. And then we need the freedom to do it. Karma, cause and effect. There are a lot of factors involved in acquiring spiritual experience. Many people join different religions or schools, including the Gnostic tradition, and mistakenly assume that once they've heard the theory, or once they've accepted it and begun to believe in it, that they're on their way to God. This is mistaken. It's only that first stage of learning about the energy, learning about the parameters, the causes and conditions. But you have to go to the next step, which is to use them, to apply them, to actually activate, to actualize those teachings in your life. And this is true whether you call yourself a Gnostic or a Christian or a Buddhist. It is insufficient to merely believe. Belief doesn't create anything. What creates is action. And that's really the root of the word karma. Karma means cause and effect, but the root word is karman, which is Sanskrit, and it means act. So karma really is the law of action and consequence. Whether we call ourselves a Gnostic or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jew or Muslim, there is a common interest, a common intent shared amongst all religions, which is the longing to experience the truth. The urgency in the heart, a sense in one's heart that what we see in our daily lives is not the totality of life. And truthfully, if what we see in our daily lives was the totality of life, life would not be worth living. And this brings the second common element amongst all religious people. I mean the ones that don't just believe, but the ones that really practice. And that is a sense of renunciation, a taste, a comprehension, an understanding that what we see terrestrially is really fruitless and pointless. And that the real purpose of living, the purpose of life, is to penetrate that veil, to see beyond this physical illusion and to experience the truth. And this marks the soul. The real practitioner of Gnosis or any religion is the one who has realized and knows in their heart that they're tired of suffering. They want it to end. They want suffering to end. We tend to forget this because we get caught up in religious debate, political debate, the pursuit of money, and all the different distractions that emerge in life. But in the core, in the heart of the real, inspired, spiritual person is that sense that this physical life is not all there is, and there's something more. And moreover, we're tired of suffering, and we want to know how to change. And the only answer to that cannot be found physically. The answer to suffering, the balm, the medicine, cannot be found in a job, in a spouse, in a marriage, in children. It cannot be found by moving to another city or country. It's found in your consciousness, in your soul. And this is why the Buddha Shakyamuni gave us his beautiful first teaching, which were the Four Noble Truths. Those noble truths state in essence that there is suffering, and that suffering is caused by desire. And that if one eliminates desire, suffering ends. And there is a path to accomplish that. That path has many names. In the East, they call it Dharma. In the West, they call it by many different names, but the one we like is Gnosis, which is also used in the East. Jnana is Gnosis in Sanskrit. So this science that we study has its purpose, which is to give us the practical experience that shows us how to end suffering. And the end of suffering is to end desire. Desire is the cause of suffering. And desire has many forms. It is not simply the concept desire. If you see how complicated life is, how complicated your mind is, that is how complicated desire is. All of the suffering in all of the worlds is caused by desire. That is how complicated it is. If you can conceive in your mind all of the worlds and all of the suffering creatures, that's how complicated desire is. Not a simple thing to unravel. But it can be done in yourself. And once you can do it in yourself, you can help others. And this is the key foundation of this teaching. I'm emphasizing this because without a firm grasp of these factors, karma and suffering, it is very easy to get confused, to get distracted, and to be drawn off in different directions in your practice. And this is why in traditional religions, these factors are the very foundation that every student has to work on for a long time before they're introduced to the higher concepts, the higher practices. In any foundational level teaching, the emphasis is on karma, which is cause and effect, which in practice means ethics. Knowing how to behave, knowing what actions bring good results and what actions bring harmful results. You need to know that very well. Because as long as you're persisting in actions that produce harm, you can't possibly succeed in any higher practice. It's impossible. You're generating too much negative energy for yourself and others, and thus the higher efforts won't bear any fruit. And moreover, you have to understand that your actions create suffering, not only for yourself, but for others. When someone really comprehends these two interconnected concepts, cause and effect and suffering, something changes in them. They become a different person because they begin to become very serious in their daily life from moment to moment, how they engage with other people, how they behave, how they use their speech, how they use their body, how they use their mind. This type of person begins to irradiate a new force, a new energy, which in the East is called bodhicitta, and which in the West we call compassion, love. But it's not simply terrestrial love. It's a kind of wisdom love which is far beyond anything we can imagine in relation with our concepts of love. It is a conscious love, the kind of love that a master has, an angel. It's the love that an angel expresses. It's a love that shows in the person's action, that they do their best to not cause harm to others. It is a change of mind. And that's the other term, the other meaning of bodhicitta, wisdom mind. And once the person is showing signs of that change, that bodhicitta is really emerging in their mind stream, they can receive higher teachings. Teachings that explain and show how to take the deepest core energies in themselves and utilize them for the benefit of others. These are very potent techniques and dangerous. And that's why traditionally those techniques are only taught when someone has already established these factors. They understand, not just intellectually, but in their body, in their heart, in their mind, in their actions, cause and effect. They know when they do something, there will be an effect. They know it. It isn't just a concept. It's not something that one just forgets. So, oh yeah, I got to remember cause and effect. No. The person who knows this, it's in their atoms. Moreover, they know that every action they perform causes suffering, if that action is a harmful action, if it's a selfish action, if it's modified by desire, even if that suffering is not visible immediately after the action. And they also understand and live this urgency to serve others, this bodhicitta. Such a person is able to take higher teachings and use energy in a new way because they're trained mentally to use energy in a way that will not cause harm. And this is why, for many centuries, the highest teachings of any religion were always protected, were always kept secret. Humanity does not know what is in the esoteric heart of religion. I know everyone thinks that they know. And I know that you can go out and buy 1,000 books about the esoteric secret teachings, but they are all lies. Humanity does not know the secret teachings because humanity has never been taught them. It's not something that we should blame humanity for. It's also not something we should condemn people for or look down on people. Humanity has not been prepared, has not matured. For centuries and centuries and centuries, humanity has been kept in the antechamber, in the foyer of the temple, and has not been brought into the mysteries because humanity is immature. The evidence is everywhere. This humanity loves war. That's why we've had a continual state of war for decades on this planet. Go back and see if you can find 1 year without war. You cannot. That's why this humanity has been kept from the heart of the mysteries. And that's why when you hear people saying this and that about the secret teachings and claiming to be this and that big shot, you should just ignore them. Put your feet on the ground and be practical. Look at the facts. Look at the realities. The secret teachings have begun to be unveiled, but not in totality. Only the clues have been given. The clues that allow a student to open the door to those teachings. But the full teachings are not in the physical world. Anywhere. In any school. Under any name. The real teachings are not in the physical world. Not in the Gnostic movement. Not in the Tibetan movements. not amongst the Christians, any other Buddhist group, anywhere. The real teachings are in the internal worlds. And to access those, you have to awaken your consciousness and go to those places. Then they will teach you, because you've demonstrated that you're serious and that you can control your mind and that you can control your energy. This is the key factor. So we work here in the physical world on establishing these foundations. Understanding cause and effect, understanding suffering, and learning how to develop bodhicitta, compassion, conscious love, which equates sacrifice for others. Bodhicitta is an entirely new mind. It is Christ mind. It is the kind of mind that is only concerned with the welfare of other beings. It is that mind that can use the higher teachings. If we don't have that, the higher teachings are completely useless for us. In fact, they can be dangerous. And that's why they're withheld. And you'll probably understand a little bit more about that as we go through this lecture. So as I started, our goal or our interest spiritually is to have experience, to see the truth, to know something about what's happening on other levels of existence. Not just this physical world. But where do we really come from? What is God? What do dreams mean, really? Those types of questions cannot be answered through our senses. They cannot be answered through a book. They can't be answered through any kind of belief. They can only be answered through personal experience, through the consciousness, awakened and utilized with the right tools. To do that, we have to begin by using the physical body that we have now. This is our vehicle, our vessel. The physical body is symbolized on the tree of life of Kabbalah as Malkut, which is the lowest sphere. Malkut relates to the physical world and to the physical body. Malkut is the third dimension. So take a moment and become aware of your physical body. This vessel, this vehicle that we all take for granted, is the vehicle that you need in order to have spiritual experience. I know that we like to think that spiritual experience has nothing to do with the body, but that's wrong. We need this body, and we need it to be healthy and strong. We need it to be very relaxed and in balance. Because this body is the vessel that receives and transforms all of the forces that are necessary in order for the consciousness to do its work. We need this body, but we need to know how to use it. The ultimate goal of gnosis, of the heart of any religion, is to fully realize the capacities of our consciousness, to fully develop ourselves as a human being, to become a real human being. That ultimate possibility we've seen expressed in all the greatest masters of every religion. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna. These great masters who've displayed unimaginable love and intelligence. That ultimate potential is symbolized in this image, in the hands of this Lu. This being that's depicted here rising out of the waters is called in Tibetan Lu. In Sanskrit, the word is Naga. Naga means serpent. This Lu, or Naga, is a type of race, a type of being that is not human, and that doesn't generally appear in the physical world, although they can. They are elemental spirits, primordial intelligences of nature that protect a vast amount of knowledge and energy. Any shaman works with Lu, the forces of nature. Those forces of nature are outside of us. Every body of water has a Lu. This river has Lu. Every lake, every tree, every rock, every mountain. These are all the elemental forces of nature. But now remember your body. You're sitting in the body that is comprised of all of those elements from nature, and every day you take in more elements from nature. You take in the energies and components of Lu, and they become your body. But we do this unconsciously, without any consciousness at all of what these elements are, what we do with them, and what they become. We tend to eat garbage. We tend to drink garbage. We tend to breathe in garbage. We are what we eat. That's why our bodies are sick. That's why our minds are sick. Because we eat garbage. Not just through our mouth, but through our eyes. You see, not just food is taken in by us to transform energy, and not just air, but impressions. Through our eyes, through our ears. That's food. Haven't you noticed that you get hungry for images? That you hunger for your favorite TV show, or your favorite book, or your favorite magazine, or your favorite music? You hunger because you need those impressions. Those impressions are food. They are energy that you transform. But unfortunately, usually it's garbage. This Lu represents a primordial intelligence, and she holds in her hand a norbu. Norbu is also a Tibetan word. It means jewel. And this jewel in her hand is inflamed. This is a very particular norbu. It represents the ultimate potential of a human being. It represents what we can become. We can be that. The Sanskrit equivalent, Vajrasattva. This word Vajrasattva means diamond soul. A perfect soul. A diamond is what we consider the perfect gem. And why is it perfect? Because it reflects light. And that's what a perfect soul does. It receives all the light of the universe and reflects it out to create beauty. Not to create war and violence and lust and pride, but to create beauty, the beauty of the divine. That is a Vajrasattva, a perfected soul. And that is our ultimate potential. This Lu is showing that in the hands of nature is the secret. But notice that the Lu is rising out of the water. This is the hidden aspect of this teaching. The water is where that secret potential is hidden. Not physical water. Spiritual water. Ethereal water. Psychological water. Water here is a symbol. Water is a symbol in every religion. Very important symbol. If you remember in the beginning of the book of Genesis, one of the first things that happens is that the waters are divided. Those waters are called ma'im. And in Hebrew, that word ma'im is written with two mems. The usual mem in the beginning, and a yod, and a closed mem at the end. Ma'im. So that ma'im shows two waters. A mem above, which is the waters in heaven, a yod in the middle, and a mem below, which are the waters below. This has enormous significance on many levels. But the most important level for our discussion today is how that applies to us. Those waters are in us, in levels. But we need to know how and what that means. This image shows a yogi in meditation. And at the level of his head, we see waters flowing from heaven. These images, by the way, are from murals that were in a secret temple in the Lukang in Lhasa, Tibet, that were forbidden for anyone to see except the Dalai Lama. And when the Chinese invaded, they made it into a museum for the public, unfortunately. So the good side of that is that now we can see those images that were long hidden. But the bad side is that temple has been desecrated. This particular image shows a yogi, a practitioner in meditation, and the waters are flowing down from heaven, from the superior worlds, at the level of his head. Those waters are the waters of Shamayim in the Bible. Shamayim means the fiery waters, literally in Hebrew. But it's usually translated as heaven. But the word Shamayim is Mayim plus the letter Shin. The letter Shin means fire. So the fire is in the waters. This yogi is working on meditation, which is a practice to work with the mind. And this image is showing that the mind is intimately related with the waters. In other words, when we write the word Mayim vertically and we place it over our body, the first mem is in our head. And did you know that your brain floats in water? That is the waters of our own personal heaven. The waters above. But those waters in our spinal cord and around the brain do not merely sit in one place. The waters that the brain rests in are the fluids of the spinal column, and those fluids go all the way down the spine. Those waters flow through our nervous system. Those waters are very important. So this meditator is working with the core aspects or function, or what do you say, the steps of meditation practice, but especially meditation as taught in the higher level schools. Let's clarify this. This lecture assumes that you've already understood the foundational level aspects. That is, when you're listening to what I'm explaining in this lecture, don't relate it to foundational level teachings. What we might call Shravakyana or Hinayana. Mere concentration practices or Vipassana practices that are related to Theravada schools. When I'm talking about meditation in this lecture, I'm talking about meditation at the level of tantra, the third level of teaching, above Mahayana. This means that the person who's working with meditation at that level is working with these 4 core aspects. The most important to begin is relaxation. The real student of meditation begins by relaxing, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Without relaxation, meditation is pointless. And secondly, they learn to use prayer. To pray. This opens the heart. And without that prayer, without an open heart, meditation will be a failure. And thirdly, they work with concentration, to focus attention on one thing. And without that concentration, the mind is distracted, and again, the meditation will fail. And the 4th component is visualization, in which the person uses the powers of imagination to see. This is when the meditation succeeds. So to repeat that, this is what we studied on our recent retreat. We always begin relaxing. And really, we should be relaxing ourselves continually, all the time, to be continually preparing for meditation. We should never be tense. Tension is frustrated desire. If you ever find tension in yourself, it's because you're frustrated. And that frustration is a frustrated desire. Could be anger, could be fear, could be lust, could be pride. And if you're tense, you can't meditate. So we start with relaxation. So this yogi in this picture is very relaxed. I know this posture probably wouldn't be relaxing for any of us, but he's used to it. Of course, he's been painted on that wall for a long time, so I think he's had a long time to get used to it. Prayer, you see the symbol in his heart? That symbol represents his prayer. That is the Tibetan letter Ah. You remember in recent lectures about the runes, you've been hearing about Ah. This is extremely significant. Remember, it's the first sound the baby makes when it comes out of the womb. Ah. It is that first emergence of the breath. This Ah is in the heart. And below it is a lotus, an emerging flower, which is the flower of the heart. This is showing that our prayer has to be sincere. It's not just prayer in the mind. Oh God, please give me that car. Oh God, I'm sorry I did bad today. I'll do better. Please forgive me. It's not intellectual. Prayer is emotional. Prayer should emerge in the heart. And prayer, when it's effective and sincere, opens the heart. This is so important. So let me repeat. Relaxation. This relaxes the body, the mind, and the heart. So that when we pray, the heart will open. We might be relaxed physically, but we can be very tense emotionally. When our heart is filled with resentment, or worry, or anxiety, when we're stressed about work, or our spouse, or our children, prayer cannot happen. Meditation cannot happen. We need to be relaxed. We need our heart to open, to be sincere, to talk to God. That opening of the heart is a prerequisite for meditation. It has to happen. Then becomes the next step, which is concentration, which is where we begin to focus our attention. And this effort to focus attention is related with the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain in those waters. So notice something that's happening here that's very significant. If you put the mayim over the body of this yogi, we see the superior waters related to his head. We see the yod related to his heart. And we see the lower mem is related with the base of the spinal column, which is the sexual water. The waters of sexuality. the creative waters from which all life emerges. In other words, through relaxation, prayer, and concentration, we open up this connection between the lower waters and the superior waters in us. Why is this important? Because we want to know God, right? We want to experience the truth. We want to experience the reality. That reality is fire. It is the shin that descends from above, that makes shamayim. And that fire descends into us to fill the waters within us. That fire of shin is inspiration. You know, the Master Samael taught that meditation has 3 phases: imagination, inspiration, intuition. The steps I've explained so far take you up to imagination. You relax, you pray, you concentrate. You imagine. And when your imagination begins to show you images, because you're relaxed, because you're prayerful, and because you're visualizing and concentrating, imagination opens and you see, then inspiration comes. That is that fire, shin. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you've never had that experience, that's why I'm giving this lecture. To help you find out why. What I'm describing in this lecture are fundamental principles that anyone can use, and that are harmonious with any religion, with any practice. But in order for you to have experience of God, you need the vessel. You need the causes and conditions that will allow that experience to happen. Firstly, you need a physical body, which luckily we all have. It may not be the body we want, but we have one. If we take care of it, we can have those experiences. But something needs to be there. Not just the body itself. That's insufficient, as we probably all know. There are billions of people on this planet. They don't have experiences of God. Why? It's simple. They don't have the water. They don't have the fuel that fire can illuminate, that fire can consume. You know, in the Bible it says our God is an all-consuming fire. Fire needs a fuel in order for it to burn, for it to cast light. Do we provide that fuel? Is there something in us that God can use as that fuel in order to illuminate our minds and to awaken the fires of our heart? That fuel is the sexual waters. And that's why religions throughout all time have emphasized chastity. This image shows a yogi who was a student of Guru Rinpoche or Padmasambhava. This yogi's name is Jnana Kumara. That name is significant. It means king of gnosis. Jnana means gnosis. Kumara means king. This master, Jnana Kumara, is here shown in this image in a pose that reflects his mythology. And in his mythology, he's depicted as hiding himself in a cave for many years, sustaining himself with one thing, which is water that he took from the rock. And that's what we see. What does he have in his hand where he's gathering that water? Can anyone tell what that is? I bet you can't. It's a human skull. The top part of a human skull in his hand that he's gathering the waters in. This is not literal. It's symbolic. But what does it mean? It means that Jnana Kumara, this master of gnosis, was transmuting his sexual waters up into his head. He was taking the waters from the rock. What is the rock? It is the foundation stone. It is Yesod on the tree of life. It is the foundation of the temple, the stone that the builders disallowed, the stone that the builders rejected. That stone is the stone of the well that Jesus sat on to teach the Samaritan woman. When he said, "Dip for me into this well and take the water." The water is taken from the stone. And she says, "What is this water that you tell me about that I can have everlasting life?" And he says, "Go and get your husband and I'll tell you." Meaning, it's sexual. So Jnana Kumara is showing us all of that. Moreover, when that water is transmuted, we see in this next image of a yogi that the waters of sex are being transformed and risen through the 3 channels around through the middle of the body. The central column of the spine and the 2 columns, 2 forms of energy on either side. That energy flows up into the brain. And again, we see the letter Ah in his heart. But what is that around his head? It's a window. It's the window of the pineal gland. When we transmute the waters and bring them into the head, those sexual waters through which all life is created, the power in that water resuscitates, rejuvenates, regenerates the pineal gland. All that energy, all that force goes into the pineal gland, which is the source of clairvoyance, which is where we imagine, which is our window to the divine. And this is how it works. This image shows a yogi in meditation with the 3 channels on the spinal column, and above his head is a fire. That fire is Shin. The Hebrew letter Shin. The Mayim is his body. And we see next to his mouth the Tibetan letter Ha. And we see above his head the flame, and above that flame the letter Ah. And from that letter Ah, we see a splendorous radiation and then an image of heaven. Here we see in this picture a temple in the superior worlds. So what is this image telling us? This image is actually related to a tradition called tummo, which is a particular type of technique that's taught in a variety of schools in Tibetan Buddhism. And in the Gnostic tradition, we call it pranayama. There are many varieties of pranayama. The Sanskrit word pranayama means to harness the winds. But it is not physical wind. It is instead ethereal wind. In other words, what we call ethers. To harness the winds is to harness the energies. And those energies are shown here in this path that leads to this temple in the internal worlds. The yogi is using mantras. These letters are A and Ha. But you see, they don't write the whole mantra. Do any students here get what this mantra is? Exactly. Ham Sa. And you see the trick? Do you know the sound that fire makes? Sa. This Ah, or Ha rather, by his mouth, is the Ha when we breathe in. We breathe in the air to take the vital currents, the ethereal currents, into the body. And we imagine that rising up the spinal column as we mentally pronounce the mantra, Ham. And all that energy is going up the spine into the brain. That is the lower portion of this image. Ham. You see the ham is the ha, which is here by his mouth, and the mem, the waters. Bringing the waters from the bottom to the top. The lower waters to the upper waters. The waters of sex to the waters of the brain. Ham. And that fire that's in the water irradiates the brain, rejuvenates it, gives it life and energy. And then the yogi says, sa, with the exhalation. So in total, this causes the fire in the waters to rise to the brain and illuminate the pineal gland and open clairvoyance to give us the power to see. Very beautifully illustrated in this ancient painting. So why aren't we doing it? This is the technique. Simple, effective. It works. This technique illustrated in the secret temple is the same technique with little variations taught to all the initiated members of all the religious groups around the world. The same technique that's taught in the internal worlds to prepare the students to awaken their consciousness and go to the temple to get the higher teachings. Everything you need is here. This body that you're sitting in is an incredible vehicle. Take care of it. Stop destroying it. Stop putting garbage into it. Relax. You know, tension destroys the body. Tension and stress destroys your mind. It destroys your body. It causes you to age very rapidly. If you're stressed out and tense all the time, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to change your job and move to a new place and sell your house and all that stuff. It only means you need to change your attitude. The most radical life change you need to make is in your attitude. To transform why you're so stressed. What desire, what fear, what anxiety, what pride, what lust is causing the stress? That's what you have to work on. And you have to harness the forces that are in your body. First and foremost, the sexual energy. The sexual energy is the most powerful force that we have access to. A single sperm creates a life. That's a lot of power. Moreover, that single sperm, that single ovum, contains absolutely everything that you are, synthesized into that one little thing. There's a lot of power in there. And let's look at this. Your parents, even though I know you don't like to think about it, they had sex at least once. I know it's disturbing, but they had you. And that act has a lot of power. And in that moment when the conception occurred, those two tiny little organisms united and became one and began the process of decoding your karma and elaborating a body as a reflection of your karma, of all the causes that you'd already put into motion in your previous existence. So for 9 months, that body was prepared in the darkness, and then it was propelled out into the physical world to start suffering, to start paying its debts. But let's look at how that process happens. From that moment of birth to 7 years of age, you're basically learning how to use that body, how to move all of its pieces. how to walk, how to run, how to ride a bike, how to climb a tree, how to use your tongue, how to talk. You're learning to develop your motor skills. And moreover, you're beautiful. Every child is beautiful. Perfect. Really. Irradiating so much beauty. And then around 7, we change. The karma is getting more intense because it's starting to incorporate into our psyche. We start to get grumpy, irritable, proud, vengeful, afraid. We start developing our intellect. We start trying to figure out what the world means. What is my life all about? What is this place that I'm in? We have a lot of questions. And that goes on for a few years, till 13 or 14, usually. And then we start to feel something different. We start to develop emotionally. Friends become more important. The opposite sex, who used to be really disgusting, is now all of a sudden not so disgusting. And we start to change and become an emotionally engaged person, social. And that goes on until about the age of 21, when we actually become an adult. But let's point out something very important that happens in these 3 phases. There's a very significant change that happens. Traditionally, it was around the age 13 and 14, where our beauty goes away. It starts to. That beautiful child starts to become the unbearable teenager, who might be attractive physically, but emotionally and mentally starts to show a lot of conflict, a lot of problems, a lot of pain, a lot of struggles and difficulty. Why? When we're growing up, in those first few years, all of the energy in our body is focused on growing that body. And the most profound growth happens between birth and around 13 and 14. That's a huge growth that happens. And in that range, towards the end of that range and until 21, there are little spurts that might happen. But for the most part, we're close to our size in terms of a scale. And that's because around 12 to 14, the focus of that energy that's in us shifts. It changes with puberty. That beauty that we had as a child, the energy that we had as a child, changes. I don't know if you have a way to observe children now, but when they're young, they have a lot of energy, and we adults cannot keep up. Right? Why? What is the difference between him and me? Not just age. It isn't just age. There's another difference. He's not wasting any energy. He's very active, but he's not wasting any energy. All his energy is in him, flowing naturally and normally the way it should be. In other words, his mind is not running like a freight train. His heart is not surging with a lot of anxiety and stress and worry and attachment and fear and desire. His mind is empty. His mind is only concerned with that apple and that tow truck and how interesting they are. And that's it. He's not thinking about the bills. He's not thinking about what are we going to do today. He's not worried about anything. He's in the moment. He is here and now. That's it. That's why he has so much energy. And he's so happy. And he's so beautiful. And we're so ugly. And in pain. So when we reach puberty, this energy that was elaborating the body and helping us to develop the mind shifts and begins to focus on developing the heart. But because of our karma, because of our desire, we start to make a lot of mistakes. That energy, the sexual energy that has been perfecting us and growing us, is too much. If you're an older person, just remember how much that energy burned you when you were 14, 15, 16. And how much that energy would just take a hold of you and shake you like a rag doll. So that you didn't have even any control over your mind. Young men get erections without wanting it. They can't control their eyes. They can't control their thoughts. Young women have surging emotions, taking them to the heights and into the hells. That is sexual energy in motion, psychologically, in us. But unfortunately, we never learned how to use it. Unfortunately, we went around to our friends and learned how to masturbate. We learned how to have sex with each other. We learned how to look at pornography and to start digesting a lot of romance novels and romance movies to transform that energy. And that's how we entered into a lot of conflict and turned that energy from something creative into something destructive. That's why we're in the state that we're in now. That energy, if we learn how to contain it by will, by prayer, can be transformed in a positive manner. This is why in every religion, the prerequisite to enter the higher mysteries was to contain the sexual energy, to start restraining it. Every religion taught that. Not to the householders, not to the man and wife in their house with their kids. They don't need it. They weren't interested in it. I'm talking about the people that were tired of suffering and that wanted to enter into real religion and wanted to know the truth. As soon as they go into the doors of the church or temple, they're always given that first instruction. Stop fornicating. No more sexual abuse for you. Restrain that energy and learn to transform it. And they learn techniques, pranayama, mantra, prayer, different tools in order to start taking that energy and using it. That energy of the sexual waters connects directly with the waters of the brain. Some people nowadays, and to be specific, doctors, say that masturbation is healthy. They say that the orgasm is healthy. And they have all this so-called evidence. But the simple fact is they have not done a single study of people who transmute their sexual energy. Thus, they have no control group. They have not applied the scientific method at all. So doctors cannot be listened to. Doctors have not been initiated into this knowledge. They don't know. Doctors fornicate. Doctors have the orgasm. They do not know about the sexual mysteries. If they were to study their own priests, their own lamas, their own rabbis who know the esoteric tradition, they'd find a different story. Because the real priests and rabbis and lamas and imams all know or should know that they have to save that energy and transform it for their spiritual practice. Now, a lot of them don't know that anymore and don't care. But nonetheless, that's the ancient teaching. If the doctors were to study that, they'd find that all of that potency that's in the sexual energy rejuvenates the nervous system and rejuvenates the pineal gland and awakens all kinds of things inside the body that the common person has no idea about. specifically chakras. This image is from a Tibetan medical tantra. It's a few thousand years old. And this image shows the intimate connection between the sexual energy and the mind. To be point blank, if you're studying the mind, you have to study sex. And if you're studying sex, you have to study the mind. They are inseparable. In fact, if you study Mahayana Buddhism, then you know about the term bodhicitta. But if you've not been introduced into tantra yet, then you don't realize that bodhicitta is a word that hides the real meaning. Bodhicitta means compassion, cognizant love, and comprehension of the absolute. But in tantra, bodhicitta means sexual energy. This is a very deep teaching that very few people get. And what it reveals is the full development of bodhicitta is dependent upon sexual energy. If you don't work with sexual energy, you can never develop bodhicitta, ever. Now, this is a very important point, because there are 3 classes of tantra. Really, if you go to any group that claims to teach tantra, they're all going to talk about the same kind of things. Most of them nowadays just talk about sex. And most of them use that as their hook. To say through tantra you can have more orgasms, or through tantra you can have more pleasure, or through tantra you can unite with God, etc., etc., etc. The more serious ones will tell you that tantra is not just about sex. That the word tantra means continuum of energy. It doesn't mean sex. It means continuum. And it's a class of teachings in order to harness that energy and to awaken consciousness. And it's very serious and not easy. But nonetheless, a lot of them will talk about bodhicitta and awakening compassion for others. The difference is, if you study them, you need to see if they teach 3 essential factors: birth, death, and sacrifice. Birth just means the awakening of consciousness, the creation of the soul. Most of them teach that. Death means the elimination of the ego, the destruction of desire, and some of them teach that. Sacrifice means to serve others, to help others, and most of them teach that. So then how do you know when a school or when a teaching is good or bad? How do you know when a teaching is one of these 3 different classes of teachings? And those classes we call black, gray, and white. It's not easy from the physical world. But from the internal worlds, it's very easy. In the physical world, you can go to any school of tantra or so-called esoteric teachings, and they will all give you a good impression. They'll all have great masters that they rely on. They all have a very impressive lineage. They all have very profound scriptures, and they talk about beauty and love and compassion and serving others, and all the things that we would expect them to teach. Some of them will teach about chastity, and some of them won't. And some of them will teach about eliminating the ego, and some won't. So physically, it's almost impossible to know when a school is good or bad. This is why you have to learn to awaken your consciousness and go in the internal worlds to investigate. All of them talk about the chakras and about how to use energy, sexual energy, to awaken the chakras. Chakras are nothing unusual. It's also used as something exotic to attract people. But listen, all of you are using your chakras right now in some way or another. All a chakra is a vortex of energy. It's a place where energy moves from one place to another. It's like a nerve connection, but for energy. So when you're feeling something emotional, that's related with your heart, and the heart chakra is active if there's any energy moving there. But it depends what kind of energy it is. Is your heart filled with a virtuous emotion or with a selfish one. Then you'll know how your chakras are moving. It's not complicated. Nonetheless, when you work with sexual energy, you awaken chakras. That's why in the sexual act, a lot of energy gets moved around and we feel a lot of things, a lot of which we can't put a name on. And we become very entranced by sexuality because of the types of sensations and feelings that we experience that aren't just physical. They're very profound. That's related with chakras. It's related with spiritual things. It's related with desire. Most of us are not cognizant of all of that, what that means. But nonetheless, if we learn to use sexual energy in a positive way, we can awaken the chakras in a positive way. But if we learn to use the sexual energy with desire, we'll awaken the chakras in a negative way. And the result will be suffering. Remember that first teaching of the Buddha. Desire causes suffering. If we're engaged in sexual activity in combination with desire, we are producing suffering. I'm not making that up. Anyone can experience that for themselves. And it's also the basic teaching of every religion. So we need to understand what this means. In our physical body, we have all these forces. We need to learn how to use them properly. Here physically, we experience many things. For example, all of you can sense and be aware of a thought, right? You know when thinking is happening. But thoughts are not physical, right? I mean, they use the brain, but the thought is not in the brain or part of the brain. It's just flowing through there. Thought is not physical. It's related to the fifth dimension, related to the mental body, what in Kabbalah is called netzach. Emotion also. We sense emotion, and we might feel some kind of sensation sometimes if an emotion is very strong. But generally, we just sort of sense it, but we're not exactly sure where the emotion is or where it comes from. And that's because also emotion is related with the fifth dimension. It isn't physical. It's related with the astral body. And moreover, we have a lot of energy in us related with the vital body. This is the energy that gives our physical body the capacity to be active. This is the root of the energy that we see children using. It's the health and vitality of their vital body. What's important to grasp about this is that the vital body is a conduit for thought, emotion, and will. The vital body is a conduit, a vessel. The vital body is the superior aspect of the physical body. It's the body of energy. If you go to an acupuncturist, they're working on your vital body. If your arm falls asleep, you're feeling your vital body, that tingling. If you've ever meditated and felt like you're sitting one way, but then you feel like you're sitting another way, that's the vital body. It's the body of energy. Imagine a horse. Can you imagine a horse? You know what a horse looks like? No one here has a picture of a horse? Yeah, you do. You all do. In your mind. Do you know how you see that image? Through your vital body. Imagine your mother. Do you know how you see that image? Through your vital body. Now, your vital body is where all your energy is, especially your sexual energy. So now what do you think happens when you misuse that energy? Remember I explained about this meditator who's drawing energies up from the sexual organs up to the mind, working with this energy that descends from above, right? This is made possible by the vital body, not the physical body. The physical body is just flesh. What makes it interesting is the vital body that's in it, that is its fourth dimensional aspect. The vital body is the electricity or energy of the body, of the physical body. When you feel sexually inflamed, that is the activation of sexual energy, which is part of your vital body. When you're using your imagination, that is your vital body. You're not using your physical body to imagine, are you? I don't think so. Right? Your physical body doesn't imagine. Your mind does. And you see the images here physically because the vital body transmits that. You see? Whoops. When you are thinking, when you're aware of a thought, you're perceiving it by the vessel of the vital body. That thought is reflected in the vital body. When you're seeing an emotion, you're feeling an emotion, that emotion is in the astral body. But you're feeling and sensing that emotion through the vessel of the vital body. And what about willpower? Same. Consciousness, the same. All of these psychological phenomena are experienced physically because of the vital body. The vital body has four main aspects. They can be called sheaths or ethers. There are four conduits that make up the vital body. Bear with me, this is going somewhere really important. I know it's complicated. The two inferior ones are the ether of life and the chemical ether. The ether of life is that aspect of the vital body that manages reproduction, sexual energy. You know, the woman says her clock is ticking. Her biological clock. That isn't the body, it's the vital body, which is responsible for the energy of reproduction. And what about when you're digesting food? When you're breathing? When your stomach is transforming nutrients into energy to nourish your mind and your heart? That is the chemical ether. It is the ether in the vital body that's managing the energies of transformation. What about your senses? Well, all of you are hearing my voice. How? The sound passes into your physical ear. But then what happens? Does anybody know? We've heard a lot of theories about it, but do we know? If you meditate, you can find out. Yeah, the sound passes through the ear canal, vibrates in that filament that's in the ear, and is translated into pulses of energy, which flow into the brain. But then what happens? The brain is just a vessel that moves energy from one place to another. The brain isn't anything more than that. The brain is just dead matter, but it has energy. And that energy is the vital body. That sound is reflecting from the brain into your mind. Your mind is the one that knows English and knows how to translate what I'm saying into meaning, into concept, into images. And also your heart, your astral body, which translates it emotionally, if I happen to say something important to you. So you see, the vital body has this aspect of reflecting data from the senses, not just physical senses, but also internal senses, reflecting that information to the psyche, to the mind, to the soul. And furthermore, when you imagined your mother just now, how did you do that? Physically, you can't. It's not done with physical matter. I say, imagine your mother, and this image appears somewhere, don't know where, We all say in my mind, but we don't know where that is. That's in the fifth dimension. It's in your mental body. But that image is produced through your will, conscious will, hopefully, flowing through the luminous ether of the vital body. And that's that part of the vital body that projects through willpower and imagination. Luminous means light. So this is a very important thing for a meditator to study. As you remember the steps of meditation, relax, pray, concentrate, visualize. When we relax, we're relaxing the vital body. Because we relax the physical body. And the superior part of the physical body is the vital body. So when the physical body is relaxed, then our energetic body can relax. Which means that that energetic body, that conduit of energy, becomes very serene, very still. And if you think about it, when a body of water is still, doesn't it reflect things perfectly? Your vital body is a water. It's related with the element water, the tattva of the waters. And when that is still, it reflects perfectly. So that relaxation of the physical body and the vital body creates a stillness which allows images to be reflected without confusion. Through prayer, we activate the heart, the emotional body, which deepens that. Master Samael says that when we absorb the ethers of the vital body into the astral body, then our clairvoyant perceptions become radically improved. That's what we do with prayer. We relax, we pray, and we bring the vital and astral components, the energy and the emotion, together. Then we concentrate. And this is how we focus the mind, netzach, by means of tiferet, which is will. You see, all of these pieces are connected now. The physical body relaxes the vital body. We pray to bring in the emotional body. We concentrate the mind by means of will. All of these are becoming one. Focused in one thing. Present, here and now. Then we can do something. This is when magic happens. When we have the presence of God, when we're harnessing all of our forces and energies, when we're focused and our heart is open and sincere, and we look sincerely into the visualization, the eyes of the Spirit open. Clairvoyance, imagination, the power to see. That's represented here in this image. This image represents Guru Rinpoche, or Padmasambhava, who brought Tantra into Tibet 1,000 years ago, taking the form of Vajradhara. This form represents the unity of imagination and willpower. The unity of wisdom and method, which in some Mahayana traditions is translated as action and vision. I don't remember the Chinese terms. I think it's Su and Xin. I don't remember. But what this represents is how from the waters emerge life, spiritual life. If we want a spiritual life, we have to look in the waters, our own waters. Whether we are a single person or a married person. The secret is here. If you've ever watched any tantric Buddhist lead a ritual, they always use these two elements, a vajra and a bell. The vajra is that element that looks like a symbol of infinity. Looks like this. Because it does represent that. The term Vajra in Sanskrit means thunderbolt. It represents a phallus, male sexual organ. The bell, on the other hand, represents the feminine sexual organ. That's why we have to work with both, the Vajra and the bell. Male, female. That is the secret of Tantra. Whether we're single or in a couple, to use that energy in harmony, in balance with the divine. This image shows how that's done. This is a picture of Vajrapani. The name Vajrapani is Sanskrit, and it means Vajra in the hand. I don't know if you can see what's in his hand. That is a Vajra. It is a male phallus. And what this deity is representing is the ferocity of willpower needed to maintain control over the sexual energy. It takes a lot of willpower because our minds are very corrupted. We are easily seduced by desire. It takes a lot of will. But through the power of the Vajra, this element, and through willpower in union with imagination, that power can be harnessed. If we throw that energy away, we won't have any visions at all. So the couple is able to access that power to a higher degree because those forces of the divine are represented in the three factors or the three elements in their sexual organs. The three forces of the Trinity are present in the man and the woman, and when they unite, they form the seal of Vajradhara, or Vajradakini, which is, of course, the seal of Solomon, the Star of David. The six-pointed star represents the union of male and female. It also represents the union of wisdom and method. So in synthesis, what this means for us is that we have to get really serious about how we're using our energy. Oh well. When we meditate, we need to look practically at what we're doing. Meditation is the way that we're going to stay inspired in our work. I know the teachings are very beautiful and complicated, and we've given hundreds of lectures, and there are hundreds of books, and it's enormously beautiful and complex. And we need to know all the information. We need to study, and that's what prepares us to interpret our experiences. But if we're not having experiences, what are we going to interpret? If we're just studying and studying and studying but have nothing to interpret, we need to reevaluate our practice. We need to be having experiences. I'm not saying that we need to be going off to visit the planet Mars in our astral body every day. That would be awesome. But at the very minimum, we need to be seeing how we're causing suffering today. That's the kind of experience we need. Practical experience that helps us unravel the problems that we have and the problems we're creating for others. The fuel for that is in us. It is these waters. It's how we use the waters of the sex and how we use the waters of our mind. The relationship between them, as I was explaining in the beginning, is that yod, the Hebrew yod. That letter, which is between the two mems, is really significant. There are a few lectures about the yod that we've given that barely scratch the surface. That yod is the smallest Hebrew letter. It relates deeply to who we are as human beings. Our essence, our core, our synthesis is a yod. The yod represents a man, a woman, a person, but as a dot, because we really are that. We're just insignificant dots of dust in the cosmic scale of things. But in that dot is the potential to become a complete human being, a Vajrasattva, a diamond soul. And that's why the symbol of the yod is exactly equivalent to a symbol in Tibetan Buddhism, which is called tigle. Tigle is also translated as dot or drop. And the tigle represents a spot or dot of primordial consciousness. But moreover, it is sexual energy. The yod is sexual energy. Our essence as a person is in our sexual energy. That single sperm or single ovum through which we can create a child. Everything of us is in that. That tigle, that yod. So by harnessing that, transforming it, we can become a Vajrasattva, a diamond soul. In other words, instead of wasting that energy and creating problems for us through desire, through taking that creative energy and creating destruction and pain, we take that creative energy and we create for others. We create for the divine. We create a soul. We create beauty. Every Buddha, every angel was born that way. There's no other way. Everything that's born in the universe is born from sexual energy. Everything. The demon is born from lust. The angel is born from chastity. Both are born from sex. So when we use the sexual energy by means of our mind, by means of our imagination, to feed desire, we create infernal things. We create egos. We create effigies, entities. So when we were teenagers and we learned to masturbate and look at pornography and look lustfully at the opposite sex, we were using that sexual energy to create forms in our own mind. And so we built an image in our mind, many images of what we want. The man imagines the lustful woman doing all the things that he wants her to do, and with his own sexual energy, directed through his vital body in relation with his mind, he produces forms in his mind. Those forms are real. And those forms want more energy. And so that man starts to have dreams with that woman that he's imagined. And that woman in his dreams comes every night to get more energy. So every night he's having dreams and spilling his sexual energy and having wet dreams, nocturnal pollutions. And the same happens with women. The woman has imagined this perfect man, this prince who comes every night to be romantic and woo her. And she gets aroused and loses her sexual energy through that imaginative act. And that feeds that form in her mind. And night after night, that form comes to get more energy. These are real things. They exist. And every one of us has them. So if we're having trouble remembering our dreams, if we go to sleep at night and we're completely unconscious the whole night long, why? We have no energy. We waste our energy all day long in our stress and anxiety and our chasing all of our desires. And then when we go to sleep, we're totally exhausted. And so we don't know what happens to us at night. But I can give you a hint. We do at night what we did all day. That's why in the morning we wake up, I dreamed of work. I was killing my boss. And that's because during the day, you're really mad at your boss. Whether you know it or not, you have a lot of resentment. Or at night, you dream that you were having sex with your neighbor or your coworker, because during the day, you're having lust for your neighbor or coworker. And you're wasting all of your energy. And you're creating forms in the mind, which are karmic, which cause suffering. This is why we're in the situation that we're in. So the antidote in every moment. Choose consciously how you're using your energy. Learn how you use your energy and what the consequences of it are. Observe what happens. Observe what happens when you feel anger towards this person and you start thinking about it a lot. And you start dreaming about it. What is the result? The anger gets stronger. When you feed a desire, it gets stronger. It doesn't go away. But what happens if you try to ignore it? It also doesn't go away. It waits for the moment that you're not paying attention, so it can rush in and get whatever energy it can get. So you can neither ignore it or feed it. You have to take the middle way, which is to always be observant of it, to not indulge in it, to not avoid it, but to watch it, to learn about it, to stop feeding it, but through knowledge, self-knowledge. If you want to take your energies and your sex and your mind in order to have sexual elevation, to improve your sexual life, do that with awareness. Learn about your sexual behaviors. Change the ones that you know in your heart are wrong. Every time you commit that act, you deepen your suffering. Every time. So stop. But stop with comprehension. Stop with understanding. Stop knowing that in your heart you know this is what you have to do. And don't go back. During the day, you have to train your senses. Because all day long we're using our energies. The sexual energies in the mind are very related. Every time you look at someone lustfully, you transform that energy that was pure, that came from God, and you make it into something demonic. And you create in your mind an image of that person. Instantly. This isn't negotiable. It isn't like you can say, well, I'm only going to look for a second because I want to understand my lust. That's a deception of your ego. Because the instant you look, that energy is transformed into lust. Even if you don't look, but the lust is there in your heart, the transformation's happening. Learn to stop. Learn to harness that energy. Learn to experience what happens when you harness it. And the same goes for every ego, every defect that we have. For fear, pride, jealousy, envy, resentment. All of those emotions that are negative and cause harm to us. We invest all of those with energy, and they all hurt us. So if you're wondering why you've been meditating for a while, or you've been doing vows or mantras or different practices for a while, but you're not having any experiences, here's the answer. Everything is cause and effect. If you're not having experiences, there's one of two reasons. Either you don't have the energy, or you don't have the karma. That's it. The teachings work. That's been proven by hundreds of thousands of people. So it's not the fault of the teachings. If you want to have comprehension and understanding of your situation, if you want to see God, you want to experience something true, work on your practice. Firstly, save energy. And if you're saving energy and you're not having experiences, it might just be your karma. You might just have to suffer in darkness for a while. That happens. And it might be a long while. But usually you'll find out about that. I'll give you an example from my own experience. I went through a long period of time many years ago where I was meditating very seriously. I don't remember exactly, but I must have been meditating 2 or 3 hours a day. And I was feeling a lot of emotional pain because I wasn't having visual experiences. I wanted to see things. I wanted to have a visual, for my visualization to bear fruit and to see something. And I wasn't, so I was having a lot of pain. One day I was meditating, And I was just trying to not worry about my desire for an experience. I was trying to just relax. And all of a sudden I realized that I was seeing, not with my physical eyes, but with my astral eyes. And I felt that, finally. And then, in that moment, it was as if a blindfold was slowly lowered over my eyes. And I couldn't see. And then I understood. It was my karma. I had to suffer that pain of that longing because of my own crimes. I deserved that. And so in that moment, I accepted it. I bowed to the will of God. I said, okay, this is what you want from me. Thank you. I'll pay what I owe. Let me pay it now and be done. So think about that, but work hard. Any questions? Oh, yeah, wake up. Any questions, please?
Yeah, you said in the yellow book they have the mantra as it always goes, tone, sa.
That's the Egyptian pranayama.
Yeah, and there you said with hamsa.
Yeah, hamsa is a different pranayama.
Pretty much the same thing, because I know yellow book was teaching something.
Yeah, the Master Samael taught many different pranayamas. There are different varieties. So the Egyptian pranayama is just a different version. They work a little differently, so I would suggest trying them. Do one for a week and then do the other one for a week, and you'll see they're a little different. Question in the back?
Would it be harmful or beneficial for a person who has not masturbated or had sex for 7 months, but has only recently really started to tread the path of gnosis?
That's the end of the question? So the question is it...
Harmful or beneficial for a person who has not masturbated?
Okay. So is there any harm or benefit for a person who's not had sexual activity for 7 or 8 months or so? It really depends on you and your karma and your situation, whether there is harm or benefit in what you've been doing. I don't know specifically what you've been doing. But let's put it this way. Every single day, your body is receiving and transforming energy. Every day. Every night when you sleep, your physical body goes to sleep, and your vital body is recharging. It's absorbing solar energy and charging itself with a lot of energy. And the core energy there is sexual energy. And this is why men wake up in the morning with a lot of sexual energy. Very active, because the vital body has been replenished. So energy is generating every day. What do you do with that energy during the day? We don't just use it through the sexual act. We use it with our mind. We use it with our heart. How do we use our energy? So this is a question that we have to ask ourselves. Is that energy causing harm? Or is it nourishing us? And that's really going to come down to how you behave, what you're doing with your time and energy. It's going to be different for everybody. Yeah?
How can we develop bodhicitta, especially when we don't feel or cannot find a deep sense of compassion for the people around us? Also, you said we should pray with our heart during meditation. Does this mean we should use emotion to pray rather than mental verbalization?
Okay, good questions. The first is, how do we develop bodhicitta, especially if our heart doesn't feel much emotion for others? It's a very good question. This is probably the state of most people. The development of bodhicitta is not something that comes rapidly or easily. In fact, in most cases, it's developed over a period of lifetimes. Bodhicitta is a very profound element. So if you're someone who doesn't feel much emotion in your heart, just work with where you are. Start with where you are and how you are as a person. Start with observing your behaviors and how you affect other people. This is why the foundational schools start with karma, cause and effect, looking to see how our own actions affect ourselves. And from that, we start to see how our actions are affecting others. And the important detail here is this. When you see and you really understand that an action that you perform hurts yourself, and then you feel pain, and you recognize suffering in yourself, and then you say, wait a minute, if I'm making myself suffer, this is not good. It doesn't feel good. It's painful, but I'm making this other person suffer too. That's what's going to awaken your heart. You're going to start to realize, I don't want to feel bad, but I'm making this other person feel bad. I don't want them to feel bad. That's the beginning of bodhicitta. That's where it begins. So work with that. And the second part of that question is about prayer. Should prayer be emotional rather than mental? Well, generally, yeah. Prayer is supposed to be an emotional connection with our own divinity. But if our emotional center is very dry, if we don't feel much emotion, then that's difficult. So again, I would recommend a similar type of exercise. To start observing yourself, looking at your behavior, and asking God for help. Start developing a connection with your own Divine Mother. She's the one that can revive the fires of your heart through your self-knowledge. And that relationship, that connection with your Divine Mother is what's going to open your heart. This is much easier for women. Men, it's very difficult to develop that relationship, but it's critical. Men tend to think, oh, I'm not going to be emotional, I'm a man. I have to be strong. Yeah, men are strong, but we also have emotion. And we have a type of emotion that's different from women, but equally important, equally vital. And we need to awaken that capacity. It's really important. The bodhicitta that emerges through the heart of a man is different from the bodhicitta in the heart of a woman, but we need both. So if our prayer is cold and dry and lifeless, work with visualization. Try to find an image or some reflection of divinity that you feel connected to. It might be a painting or a statue. It might be a mantra. It might be a story that you heard about a master or a divinity. And work on visualizing that and praying to that divinity to help you open your heart and develop a connection. But I'll tell you, one last detail about that. An important detail about the awakening of the heart. I was explaining to you that the way we use our energy is psychological. So the sexual energy in our vital body flows into our heart and mind. And so when we work with these practices of meditation, through prayer we open the heart, and through concentration and visualization we work with the pineal gland. So that energy is flowing upwards, right? The heart is open and active. The mind is open and active. But we're using that energy all day without meditation too. So when we're working during the day at our job and we're experiencing flashes of anger and experiences of lust and flashes of pride or shame, that same energy is moving through our heart and mind, but damaging them. When we're listening to violent music, watching violent movies, when we're engaged in any kind of lustful activity, like looking at pornography or having sex with different people, that energy is in motion and it's destroying our heart and mind. Do you know why people don't have feelings nowadays? Because they don't have feelings. Their hearts are completely destroyed. The emotional center is damaged from intense violent music, from intense violent games, from intense violent stories and movies and all that stuff that we're always feeding ourselves with. It destroys the emotional center. It loses its sensitivity. And the same with the mind and the intellect. They become damaged. What will happen if you're serious about this study is when you begin to train this sexual energy and restrain it and direct it consciously through these different exercises, all of this is restored. Your heart is restored. Your intellect is restored. You begin to regenerate. So really, science is this Gnostic studies is a science of regeneration. That energy begins to flow through the heart and make it beautiful again, and into the mind and make it beautiful again. So if you're feeling like you don't feel, and you're having trouble with your mind, be faithful to your practices. Be faithful to your Divine Mother. Transmute your energies. Pray a lot. And eventually, little by little, you'll start to see emotions emerging, new feelings, and new capacities in your mind that weren't there before. It's very beautiful, but takes patience. There was another question. Oh, let me get some up here, please.
Can you just touch on the aspect of compassion? As we all live here in this physical reality, is there ever a point where we can actually be overly compassionate, where we might have to detach from, let's say, other people or circumstances where it would be affecting us? And can you discuss more about right action in
Sure.
that specific circumstance?
Okay. Well, let me clarify something about what compassion means. This word bodhicitta is usually translated as compassion, but it's not a good translation. The word bodhicitta literally means wisdom mind. And that sounds different from compassion. I think in the West, especially, compassion has become very sentimental. Like, we think compassion means we have to give money to poor people. That's a good thing to do in some cases, but that's not what bodhicitta means. Bodhicitta means exactly what you said. It's right action in the right moment. If you're a parent, sometimes you have to discipline your child. That's compassion, right? If you're a teacher working with a student, sometimes you have to discipline your student. And I have to talk to some of you guys after class. So bodhicitta is that. It's the wisdom of the divine. So when I was talking at the end of the lecture, probably a lot of people got lost when I was talking about action and method. This is very subtle and difficult to grasp, and that's kind of when I breeze through it, because it's going to take time for those things to sink in. That union is bodhicitta activated. And what it means is that when you have that union that's happening in you, it means that your divine is able to guide you to behave and act in the right way at the right time. None of us have that ability because we're all suffering with a lot of ego and a lot of problems. But if we're really sincere and serious and we're really trying to listen to the guidance of God, in the critical moments, He can help us as long as we're listening. So the answer to your question is, when you're not doing your self-will, but you're doing God's will, that's right action. And that's when compassion is fully implemented. But how to do that? It's always changing. Only God knows. Karma is very complicated. I mean, I know people who think, we have to always be like this. It's not like that. Everyone has different karma. Every situation is constantly changing. So the real student of their own inner master is always with an open mind and able to move in any direction at any time.
So the will of the being is what should be followed.
Absolutely. So now our job is to find out what that is. And usually He won't tell you until the last second. Well, and there's a reason for that, because we'll mess it up. If God told you, in a couple of years I'm going to put you in this Gnostic movement and all your egos have to die, would any of us go, yeah, thanks? I don't think so. We'd all be trying to do our best to avoid it. So generally speaking, God's not going to tell you until the exact second that you have to act. Because then you don't have time to think about it and mess it up. You have to do what you have to do. That's it. No time to think. So if you're getting frustrated, not getting guidance, just think, okay, it's my fault, because He knows I'm dumb, and He knows I'll make a mess of my life, so I just have to wait until He tells me. It takes a lot of patience. There was a question back here.
I have a question. The Master gives a lot of practices for cleansing the vital body, with rue and sage, and you've done egg cleanse.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you can do on your own, or should you have the presence of a priest?
Yeah, the cleansings that we teach involving sage and rue especially, or the egg, anyone can use anytime. You use the plant sage, the plant rue, or a chicken's egg or another kind of egg. And there are different cleanses that you can do. The easiest is to take a dried sage plant or rue plant, burn that, and sweep the smoke all around yourself while you use a prayer or a type of conjuration. There are varieties of this practice. This cleanses your inner bodies, your vital bodies specifically, of elements that can harm you. So when I was explaining that when you use your sexual energy to imagine lustful scenes, something is created, those somethings become creatures like rodents or insects in the other dimensions. And when you live in a city like this one, it's filthy. It's disgusting. And so those elements are everywhere. So we need to do continual cleansings, at least every week. And I would say more often if you can manage it. And the cleansings are not hard. Just use incense, different types of prayers. But what happens is those elements are there to steal energy. So if you go to a dirty place, a bar, a restaurant, a movie theater, a club, even onto the train, certain parts of town where people are engaged in a lot of very negative actions, all those elements are there waiting to take energy. And if you show up, the bright young Gnostic student who's starting to save their energy, you're like a walking battery. And those elements say, hey, free food, let's go. And they all attach themselves to you and start taking your energy. And then you start to feel depleted again and start thinking, oh, this isn't working. These techniques are no good. Well, they work, but there are things taking your energy. So this is a process of learning how to behave, how to cleanse yourself, how to change a lot of aspects of your life until you're able to get to a place where you can sustain it. So yeah, cleansings are important. I'm glad you mentioned that. There's another question.
I guess when you come out of the city, are you like cleansing yourself?
All the time.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I have to work in the city, Philadelphia, it's the same deal.
Yeah, and that's why we emphasize to use a lot of incense, especially the purer grade, because it does a better job. If you can grow your own sage, if you live somewhere where you can have a little garden and grow sage, then you can develop a relationship with that plant, and it'll do an even better job to help you. So at my place, I have a little tiny little growth of sage, and I harvest it every year, and it lasts me through the rest of the year. So it helps a lot. And there are different plants that are used for that. Juniper also is very useful, and that's a traditional plant in Tibetan Buddhism. It's used juniper. There are many others. And so you study occult medicine or igneous rose, and there are many practices related to those types of cleanses. Also, sulfuric baths are good. You can also put sulfur powder in your shoes, and the fumes from the sulfur will help keep those little bugs off of you. They're really gross. Anyway, another question?
How does one make the path the goal of life and all other daily activities secondary, but balance from normal living?
So how does one make the path one's life and all the other activities life secondary? Through attitude. Really, it comes down to a question of what you value, what's important to you. If someone really has their primary focus in making money, then that's what they're going to do. Even if they love religion or love esoteric teachings, it doesn't matter. They're putting their heart into money. They have the right to do that. And they will receive the consequences of that, whatever those consequences are. If you're the type of person that's realizing that the mundane life is not worth it, then you will naturally invest in the spiritual life, and that will bring its fruit gradually over time. So what I'm trying to express is that you can't force it on yourself or anyone else. You have to go with the natural inclinations of your heart and respect the will of everyone. If your own will is drawing you into religion, follow that and nourish it. But if someone you love is not, you have to respect it. That's their karma, that's their will. They have to do that. So just love them, support them, and help them. You can't change them. You can't even change yourself. We're so unable even to change ourselves. How do we think we can change somebody else? So we have to respect other people, just work on ourselves. Yes?
About protection against darkness, transmutation gives power, and loss of energy causes weakness. When a student accidentally loses energy, how can his prayers of protection be effective?
So when a student loses energy accidentally, how are their prayers of protection effective? That's a good question. Any prayer that we perform has a power proportional to the energy available to us. That's simple cause and effect. A person who's only beginning in these practices won't have much energy. And a person who's been long time should have more energy. Not always. Sometimes they have bad habits that they're ignoring. But if someone has accidentally lost their energy, so for example, they had a wet dream or they couldn't control their energy in some form and maybe got identified with pride or anger and got very angry and expelled a lot of energy through anger, then naturally they will have less energy. It's simple. But that energy will recuperate. So be patient. And in the meantime, meditate on what caused the fault. Don't let it happen again. And that is going to come through comprehension, through feeling the pain of having made the mistake. I know some people avoid it. You know, we make a mistake or we get identified with something and then we say, forget it, I just made a mistake. And then we don't comprehend it. You're just setting yourself up for it to happen again later. Anytime something happens that you regret, be glad. Sounds weird, doesn't it? To be grateful for making a mistake. But the real Gnostic student is grateful because they've caught a mistake. And in that instant is a chance for you to redeem yourself of that cycle of that mistake. Because we repeat mistakes in cycles. So when you catch yourself getting identified with something, don't beat yourself up. Remorse, yeah, we feel remorse. But don't start building shame, self-deprecation, going around singing your song to everyone, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so evil. No. Be grateful. Now you have something to meditate on. Students always come and say, I don't know what to meditate on. It's because you're not observing yourself. If you really pay attention to yourself, you'll see you have too much to meditate on. So I love it when the student comes and goes, I don't have enough time to meditate on all the things I see. Then I know the person's serious. There is so much to meditate on. If you're not seeing it, you need to look deeper. Please.
The ego is memories, and we've been different sexes in previous lives. Then why does lust mostly choose the opposite sex to derive its images of temptation? Is lust a memory or a craving separate from an image?
I think that question probably take a lecture to answer. The question is about lust and memories in relation with our physical body and in relation with lust for the opposite sex. So it seems like if we're born in different lives and we're different sexes in different lives, why does lust in this life only project itself towards the opposite sex? Lust that we see terrestrially during our physical life is only the superficial lust related to our superficial existence. We're not seeing the depths of it. When you start to meditate and have experiences out of your body, you will see it, and you will be very disturbed. Honestly. It is extremely disturbing to see what is truly in our minds. The elements that we've created from existence to existence are still there in our minds, but it's subconscious. So when those elements are seeking to be fed, they seek food through our contemporary personality, through whatever means they can get it. And it's different depending on the person, their karma, and their personality. It's very complicated. There's no easy way to synthesize that. But basically, what you're seeing now is not the whole picture. Meditate on what you can see and go deeper. And little by little, you'll start to understand what I'm talking about. Another one back there.
Is it normal for our physical heart to be overwhelmed and start pounding, beating rapidly when we feel our heart awakening or have other experiences? Or is it a sign of resistance, for example, ego of fear?
When we are working in this type of work, there are many types of experiences that can emerge in the different parts of our body and psyche. It's going to depend on a few different factors. If someone's having a beating heart or surging heart, clearly there's emotional energy at play. Whether it's positive or negative depends on the experience. Depends on the person. So you have to reflect and look into what that is. I don't know the specific situations. It'd be hard for me to say.
Can you repeat the name of the
The paintings are from the Lukang. It's popularly known as the Dalai Lama's secret temple. And there's actually a book out of a lot of pictures from it. Any other questions? Wow, you all got it. Okay, thank you. The presentation of this lecture was made possible by donations from listeners like you. Help Gnostic Radio to help others. Make a donation by visiting gnosticradio.org. For questions and deeper understanding of this lecture, we invite you to explore the wide variety of resources available on our websites. Thank you for your support. May all beings be happy.